Gospel reading today comes from Matthew chapter 25. For it is as a man going on a journey, summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received that 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into joy of your master. The one with 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me the 2 talents. See, I've made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not gather seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But the master replied, You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I do not sow, and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested the money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to the one with 10 talents. For to all of those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is the word of God. Back on All Saints' Day, I talked about the service of ordination at annual conference, which is one of the largest attended special services at annual conference. It's also a service that's accompanied with a lot of pageantry. There's usually a brass band, and in some cases with strings, to accompany the organ for congregational singing. At the beginning of the service, everybody stands up, and clergy in their robes and their vestment process down the aisle behind very colorful banners representing each section of ministry. And when I grew up in the South Georgia Conference, we had a bishop who was very much into the pageantry, and he loved to dress up. And for services like this, he had robes that were more colorful and more elaborate than what anyone else had. That's because he bought his robes in Vatican City when he went there for a conference between Methodist and Roman Catholic leaders. And my pastor, when I was growing up, told the story of his ordination service, where there was this long processional coming down as everyone stood to sing the opening hymn. And at the end of the processional, there was an acolyte with a censer with incense in it, walking in front of the bishop who was so finely adorned. And his little boy tugged on his mother's pants leg and asked, Mama, is that God? Think about that little boy's image of God and what it says about who he is and his understanding of the divine nature. How we talk about God says a lot about our sense of spirituality. We recognize that God is awe-inspiring, is larger and more encompassing than anything we can possibly imagine. God is mysterious. That means God is beyond our abilities to completely understand or define. Therefore, we have images, metaphors, that we use to talk about our understanding of God and our relationship to God. If you'll go back to 9th grade English class, you'll remember that a simile is something that compares two unlike objects using like or as. A metaphor compares two unlike objects without using like or as. And theological language is always metaphorical languages. We've got these different images that we use to relate to the divine. That little boy's understanding of God is an image that would have addressed certain parts of his life. The part of him that wanted to behave and to keep in step. The part of him that was seeking out wisdom, or maybe even the part of him that was seeking out awe. But if his idea of God was that beautifully adorned bishop walking down the aisle, that's not necessarily an approachable or nurturing God, the kind of God on whose lap you might sit. So in order to broaden one's perspective of God, we need to look to the Bible for different images, different metaphors, as a way of relating to the divine. The psalm that was read for us this morning is just 4 verses long. But even within these 4 verses, we have a number of different rich metaphors and images for who the divine is. It's a part of what's been referred to as Psalms of Ascent, which some scholars believe, and an image that I like, means it was sung by pilgrims walking up the hill to the holy city of Jerusalem during Passover or other festival times. And initially, the image of God is one that makes a person look up in awe and wonder, looking to the top of the mountains and the sky beyond that. It's an image that comes out of a monarchy where God is a sovereign, ruling the land, and we are all servants, stewards of what God has given us to oversee. It's an image of awe, but not necessarily an image of fear. This is a sovereign in whose company those who are God's subjects feel comfortable with. It's an idea of God as sitting up on a throne, looking at all of us, knowing what has been done and what has not been done. So this is a God to whom we make our confessions. Confessions for the sins and the shortcomings, the regrets that we have. What we should have done, we wish we would have. And what we did, that we might regret. The God who is the judge up on the throne, who sees all and sees into us. This God is the one to whom we confess. This is also a God who is a divine judge, who sees not only what we do, but all of our neighbors too. A God that we look to for that perfect justice when the world in which we live seems unjust, where the strong and the haughty prey on the weak and on the vulnerable. It's also an image that, if you noticed, is both masculine and feminine for God. God is referred to as a sovereign who is so deeply connected with God's subjects. Knowing God doesn't even have to speak. Just a wave of the hand, and the servants know what to do. And in this psalm, God is a master who gives instructions to his servants. But God is also a maid who gives instructions to her maidservant. These are all some of the rich images that we find in this little psalm of just 4 verses in length. when it comes to our life and to our spirituality. We experience different things at different times in our lives. And most of us, when we think about who God is, and particularly how we address God in prayer, we tend to use just the same one or two names for God every time. And like that little boy, that means we form a certain image in our heads. An image of God that may speak to certain occasions, but not to others. And so if we want to address those other times in our lives, if we want to broaden our understanding of the divine and deepen our spirituality, then we look to the Bible, God's holy word, for some of these many images and metaphors to help guide and direct us spiritually. Whenever the 1989 hymn was being compiled, the editors looked to the Bible to see how many different names for God they could find. And in one panel, they came up with as many as 200 names for God found in the Bible. And that's not even all of them. And they sent this list of 200 names to professors of public worship and sacred music at seminaries around the United States. And they offered these professors the challenge to write a hymn that would encompass as many of those 200 names as they possibly could. And the one professor who accepted the challenge gave us the hymn that we find at 113 in the hymn, known as Source and Sovereign, Rock and Cloud. That hymn uses 40 of those 200 names for God. And there are 3 verses. Each verse represents a different version or a different person of the Trinity. So the first verse addresses images related to the Father, the Creator. The second verse are images related to the Son, the Redeemer. And the third verse, the Spirit, the Sustainer. And the chorus is one that celebrates the oneness of God. Now, in true fashion, it is ironically a hymn that I have found isn't that singable. So it's one that's a little bit problematic to use as a congregational hymn. But I've used it many times myself in personal devotions and also in Bible studies with adults and with children as a spiritual guide and a tool. If you want to broaden your spirituality and widen your understanding of the divine, I invite you to use the lyrics of that hymn that have all of these rich biblical images for God. And imagine what it would be like if in your prayers each day this week you chose a different name, a different image to begin your prayer. Feel free to borrow a hymn and bring it back next Sunday when you return. See how I do that? Or jot down a few of the names that are in there when you have time this morning at another time. And I invite you to use those in guiding your prayers. Let's imagine just what the 4 verses of Psalm 123 would be like if we used those to guide our prayers. God, according to that psalm, is the one to whom we confess. What would it be like if you began a prayer, confessor, and then share whatever is on your heart and mind, whatever is burdening you, whatever is weighing you down, whatever you regret, whatever you feel guilty about? Begin your prayer, confessor, and then unburden and unload. And then after you do that and you've said everything you need to, then begin the second half of that prayer and address God as mercy. What would it be like after praying to confessor to then extend a prayer to mercy? There are those divine and royal images that we find in this psalm too. What would it be like to take the image of the maid or maiden and address a prayer to my maiden or her majesty. Imagine praying to God as a royal and a regal queen in whose court you and I serve. And there are also images within this psalm that aren't related to people at all. There's the one that begins this particular psalm. What would it be like sometime in your prayers if you walked outside and looked that way and you began a prayer, mountain? What would a prayer sound like if you began praying to mountain? I invite you to use this hymn, this song, and the Bible to explore these different names and images for God and have it guide your prayers. And trust the Holy Spirit to lead you and take that prayer wherever the Spirit leads you. Broaden your understanding of the divine and deepen your spirituality as we explore and communicate with a God who is too magnificent for words and for whom 200 names is not enough. Amen.